Cool. So I'm just remaking this whole video because I think that over time I realized that a lot of people actually watch the video. So without further ado, this is my Lightning Blast Spark Charge build. And it's basically a sorcerer build that uses Spark Charge to deal damage mostly. So in the context of Lightning Blast, usually a lot of people use Lightning Blast for single target damage with Convergence, which is this one. But the problem with Convergence is that you're actually making your Lightning Blast costing mana. So technically, the more you cast Lightning Blast, the more mana you use, and it kind of poses a lot of problems with having to maybe spec into Mana Strike or Focus, which is, you know, at the end of the day, it's kind of redundant. I don't put value in killing boss really quickly because I think that 90% of the grind, or not even 99%, I would say, it's about, you know, clearing AoE mobs, right? Or like, yeah, just packs of enemies and running monoliths really quick. And when we think about ambush, in the sense of monolith, because it's part of the objectives now, you know, yeah, it's really hard to basically put value in single target damage anymore. And I'm not saying that this build doesn't have good single target damage, but yeah, 0 mana cost, which means that even if you ever go minus mana, which can happen with some with, you know, the way we play this build, you can still deal damage anyway. So your mana regen, you know, your mana will regen, and you're still casting Lightning Blast. So Spark Charge also only costs 4 mana, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, basically we're using Lightning Blast as a way to deal Spark Charge, to apply Spark Charge. And Spark Charge is actually a mechanic that's already in Lightning Blast for the longest time, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, it just never really had a scaling until now. So right now we have an item called Fragment of the Enigma, which gives 2 lightning damage per intelligence. So when I look at this, I started thinking that maybe I don't have to focus on, you know, getting damage for Lightning Blast itself. I can just use Lightning Blast as a way to apply Spark Charge. And as we can see in here, the way I set it up, you know, I no longer have Shadow Shock. I don't have, you know, front loaded even. So all the points that I put is just basically for Spark Charge, right? So we have 30% on hit here, and then this is up to 12%, so technically you can get up to 42% chance to apply Spark Charge. And since this build play cast speed, it focuses on cast speed to cast Lightning Blast as fast as possible, as often as possible, then we're basically, you know, applying Spark Charge like really fast. And the thing with Spark Charge is that it's different with melee, because in the context of Lightning Blast, it has 200% more damage. I know that in melee you have up to 200, what is it? No, up to 125. But the problem is that you're melee. You're melee, so you don't have the luxury of being ranged. And also, yeah, you know, I don't have to expand on that. But basically, you know, it's a really strong skill. So, you know, for every intelligence that you put, you get 2 lightning damage. So I have 102 at the moment. This is my current setup, which I will talk about in a bit. It's a bit different to the previous build. This is a remake of that build, just to be clear. Yeah, so we're basically scaling intelligence and scaling cast speed. Those are the 2 primary stats that we're focusing on. And yeah, you know, in terms of like gearing and everything, and this is just an overview, I will get into the specifics later. But we're just trying to, you know, get cast speed. We use Twisted Heart and Fragment of the Enigma for this build. And, you know, it's a tanky build. So as you can see, if I'm casting Lightning Blast because I'm at 41%, right, or 40% chance. That's the 10,000 there. That's spark charge. I'm just trying to proc the spark charge from here. That's 16,000. So if I'm trying really, really hard, then yeah, you can see that 200k, 280. So, and yeah, I have 370% cast speed at the moment. That's what it looks like. So the burst of damage is from spark charge, because lightning blast got nerfed, I think, a while ago, because of the shock chance no longer stacking past 10. As you can see, it's at 4 right now. I don't really apply a lot of shock chance. It's mostly from my teleport. You can definitely, get more shock chance if you have shock chance on your one. But yeah, so like you can't really shred a lot of resistances anymore as it used to be. So right now we're pivoting towards basically much bigger scaling damage, and I think it's just more potent in terms of DPS overall. And the good thing about lightning blast is because you don't have to put points into stuff like this, right? The hit damage of lightning blast itself. So the rest of the points you can just put it on the chains and a lot of the quality of life stuff, like lightning attunement, for example, which gives you 10% lightning ages, which means that you're mostly going to have lightning ages at like 24/7 uptime, basically, once you have it. If you have a lot of cast speed, it's basically up all the time, and I think that's cast speed, right? That's lightning damage and 25% DR, less damage taken. And because we're using idols that gives cast speed while you have lightning ages, that's also, that's a bunch of cast speed basically. So it's pretty, it's pretty cool. It has a window of burst, I would say. And then the fact that with Twisted Heart, so if you're new and you don't know what Twisted Heart does, it basically converts your health into ward. This is not a ward build, just FYI, because this is a health build. So the more health you have, the better it is, the better it gets, and the more cast speed you have, the better it gets. So we're continually converting health into ward. And, because lightning blast casts a lot, right? So this is probably one of the builds that can really utilize Twisted Heart to its fullest, in my opinion, because we're up to 317. And I'm not even trying with like my cast speed, to be honest. Like, I could do this, and I think it's about 320 now. Yeah, 329. And that's not using some of the items that would give me even more cast speed. Like, for example, this is T6, right? So there's still room for T7 stuff. Same thing with the gloves. So yeah, I think realistically, I'm pretty sure you're able to hit probably close to 380% cast speed, which is huge. So yeah, it's really tanky as well, because a lot of the items that we're using, some of the items are actually set pieces. They give armor, flat armor. Firebird is one of the items as well for it, and Isadora is pretty much best in slot. So yeah, it does. Just FYI, this is not, I wouldn't say it's a beginner build. You do need fragment. As soon as you have fragment, you should be able to play it. Twisted Heart is like the next best thing after it. Twisted Heart is where you basically can play this build in Empowered with almost like no issue whatsoever. So yeah, and the rest of it is pretty modular in the sense that like you kind of just want to look at your resistances and how comfortable you are with the build, how comfortable you are with the game, with the enemies, attack patterns, and so on. And obviously, defense is contextual in the sense that like if you know every single like enemy's attack pattern, then you can probably let go a little bit more defenses. Um, and yeah, that's probably my preface to gearing. So hopefully, as an introduction, that's good enough. And cut. Okay, so from passives, it's pretty simple. We're thinking about bonuses to ward. We're thinking about bonuses to intelligence and health, flat health as much as possible. In terms of mana, we want to make sure we get to 300. And that's not really a big deal if you can't get to 300. But yeah, anyway, so 8 points in here obviously makes sense. You want a lot of health, right? And intelligence here. Don't really care about the fire resistance or lightning, but to a certain extent, I think sometimes I actually find myself to kind of run out of resistances for whatever reason, because maybe the gear that I'm using don't really have resistances. It can happen if you're using a lot of exalted gear. And we get maximum points for all of these because this is the ward mechanic where when you drop to 70% health, you get like ward based on your maximum health. So, for example, right now we're at 2k, and this 200 is like I guess like, I think it's from my ward per second. I'm not sure, but anyway. So if I cast Lightning Blast 3 times, so that dropped me to below 70%, and I got that 4k ward there, that burst of ward. Right, you see that? So because I'm leeching, it goes back up really fast. So I have leech right here. It's a bit of an issue to do that. And I'm going to spend a bit of time explaining this because this is important. Leech rate turns out, or having too much leech is actually going to backfire for the most part. Unless you're taking a lot of damage. So you need to kind of understand the importance of knowing the perfect medium of like, how much leech would you actually need towards like certain situations. So I was using Prism Wraps, which has 7.4 LE leech, right? So if I do this, as you can see, it's probably going to drop more often. But again, I'm dealing a lot of like way too much damage because the dummy doesn't really have resistances, right? So it's not going to be the case with like enemies in general in actual monos because they have a lot of DR damage reductions. So yeah, anyway, pretty self-explanatory in that one. This is 5 for the cooldown recovery. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And for the Sork one, yeah, we're basically just trying to find really, really important notes and not kind of like spend too much time or spend too much points on like lightning damage increases, because a lot of these are basically just scaling stuff like intelligence. So there's 8 intelligence here, 10 here, and then mana and flat armor. Flat armor is really strong. Don't care about mana regen. Arcane Momentum is really, really strong because it gives 5% cast speed per stack, and you can get 5, so that's 25% cast speed. For this, you actually don't need it. Like, the thing is, spell damage per stack, it looks really good, right? That's about like, what is that? Is this 80% or something? It's actually not super big deal. You can put 6 in here instead and just get like a little bit more ward retention, which would be more like it'll be more responsible with like the amount of ward you can take, I guess, or you can get. And shock chance with lightning skills, maybe you can put it on here if you don't have a lot of shock chance. If you have no shock chance at all, like you can put this 6 over here instead. Lightning pan, leech, pretty, you know, pretty common. We put 5 in here. Crit multi, of course. I really like this node. 80 flat health is pretty awesome. Inside is actually not that big of a deal, but we just want the intelligence. And this is super whatever. it kind of doesn't really matter. So yeah, but again, in Sork it's pretty, I don't know. Shock is like a lot worse now, so I don't really put a lot of emphasis on it. I guess you can put shock in here because it gives more value. It gives 4 per point instead of 3. But yeah, that's about it really. It's super straightforward when it comes to passives. Now, in terms of gearing, probably the biggest thing is fragment, right? So fragment, you can have 0 LP because the item level is really low. It says requires level 46. It means that you have like higher chance to get to LP or like multiple LP in general. Ideally, you want to put cast speed and intelligence. You can have crit multi, but cast speed worth like a lot. Like cast speed is just like really insane, because when you think about cast speed, it lets you stack ward faster. It lets you do more damage. It's just everything. You know, cast speed is life. So we want cast speed. We want to make sure we have T6 or T7. If you have 1 LP fragment, you can probably try to just throw like, you know, an offhand catalyst with like 3 bad stats and just 1 T6 cast speed and just try it out, because 1 LP fragment is pretty common, right? So, but yeah, I would say if you have T7 intelligence, actually, no, you can't have intelligence on catalyst. Sorry. If you have T7 crit multi, I still think that is worse than T6 or T7 cast speed. So no, I'm just trying to think about any other stats that might be good, but no, I actually think that cast speed is best for here. So mana is okay too. We want to make sure we have 300 mana or 200. And for chest, for helmet, I have +2 to lightning blast here. Originally, this was a T7 intelligence. Obviously, that's how it dropped. It had no second prefix, and it had the T5 fire resistance and the T1 armor. So I sealed the armor. I slap T5 increased health there. You don't need a lot of lightning blast points in this setup. We just need 24. 25 would be amazing, and at 25 we get the chain range. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The biggest thing that I would say, the most important thing, is actually the base, right? So this is a Mystic Helm, and the same with chest piece. It's a Mystic Plate, so they offer critical strike avoidance. I generally don't think that you want anything else, because like when you have these two, then you can have like one piece of, I don't know, like a ring or something that has like basically, I don't know, like T5, T4 crit avoidance, and you can have 100%. So you don't need to, you can basically get, I think, what is it? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so I have over 100 at the moment, I think. So if you have like close to like perfect roll, and you get like T3, T4, then you have 100% crit avoidance, and you can have either necrotic resistance or poison resistance, and that's like much better in my opinion. Maybe not necrotic, right? Because like this gives 38, and do I think 38 is enough? Well, in some cases, no, but you can always like juggle your stats with the fact that I have to use a this string to get poison resistance. You know, it kind of tells you everything. So ideally, you wanna have that. So instead of T6 poison resistance here, I could just have like, I don't know, like a ring with like maybe like I said, T4, T5 crit avoidance. So I have 100. Crit avoidance is the most important stat in terms of defense, because what it's doing is that you're eliminating the chance of taking extra damage, right? Like you know, that's like the burst damage that you really don't want to ever like take, I guess. Because naturally, if you have capped out resistance, you can kind of, I think like most things just hit below your EHP for the most part, like Jura or any bosses for that matter. So yeah. For belt, Isadora's probably, well, it's best pretty much. It's best in slot. You can have something like this. My bad. You can have something like this, but the thing is with Isadora, right? So right now I have 1100 here. I teleport, I get 1500. With Isadora, I teleport, I get 2300, and that's like 54% armor. The good thing about armor is that like the damage reduction applies to every single element. It doesn't apply to damage over time, let me be clear, but in terms of hit damage, it applies to everything. And when we understand that like resistance is capped at 75, you know, a lot of people forget armor because they don't they don't see armor as something that's valuable. But as a mage, as a sork, if you can get armor and then you have a lot of ward, you're almost unkillable. Basically, you can basically take damage that like a lot of classes just can't. And the fact that you're able to generate like wards and I guess like recover your EHP in a really efficient manner, that's crazy. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's the best. Plus, you're casting a lot more. So, for gloves, there's so many different modes for this. I have the cast speed one, and then I have this. So basically, when we think about the cast speed gloves, we're thinking about. I think bossing is better with this, because you want to make sure that you can recover your ward as much as possible, as fast as possible. And obviously this one has shred armor. This is basically the perfect gloves for it, so maybe with a better base, maybe with noble gloves, which offers up to 10% cast speed. But if you're if I'm doing monos, okay, if I'm like, let's say, I don't know, 300 corruption, 200 corruption, and I just want like a better burst damage for my spark charge, I would pick this over the other one, because it gives me everything that I want. And plus, technically, I'm only losing like 12% cast speed because this one has 11. It's up to 12, so yeah, I mean, you might be getting better roll than mine. I'm pretty happy with mine. But yeah, that's like 17 intelligence. And that's up to 22. Technically, you can get a swaddling with 22 intelligence. That's crazy. So yeah, it's really, really strong. And I just want to let you guys know that it's important that you have multiple gear for this build. I don't think that there's bis for necessarily every single slot, because you're going to be thrown in like different different situations where you have to adapt and like change your gearing. And that's when I think it's kind of important to basically have the gear to deal with it. So I have like 4 chest pieces here. Okay, I have the one with T7 intelligence, I have unstable core, and I have prism wraps, right? And they all have different amount of HP. I want you to pay attention to the HP, right? It's around 300 or, you know, up to whatever 600 difference, I guess, with the fatality one. So the purpose of this is that, like, maybe, you know, maybe I'm pressing like a boss that deals a lot of damage, so prism wraps would be great for it. Or maybe if the boss actually deals a lot of elemental damage and I don't have, like, you know, my lightning and cold. So this is actually perfect for Jura, because Jura deals, I think, ice damage and then lightning and then void. But the void damage, right, it only happens when you're getting caught by the laser. So that laser is void, and that's also damage over time. But the ice blast, the cone one, that's ice. The lightning damage from the turret, that's that's lightning. So this will be perfect for Jura because I slapped the vitality in it. So 2k HP, and I'm leeching really fast, right? So the vitality one is just if I'm in really, really high corruption and I want to survive, because it gives me, you know, +1 charge for flame ward, you know, I can use this. And unstable core is just something that I slapped 30% health into. You know, I thought it would be cool because it gives me +1 to lightning skills. You know, I can get the chain. It's whatever. And I think this is kind of the cool thing about this build, is that, like, you don't have to use one chest piece. You can have multiple chest pieces, you know, for different occasions and whatnot. So yeah, but to be fair, you know, whichever of these would be fine, you know, even if it's like T6, right, if they're not T7. So yeah, you can probably have T6, T7 lightning crit multi as well, but they're not as valuable as intelligence in any way, shape, and form. So yeah, and I really encourage people to craft this second affix here. It says 1 charge for flame ward. It doesn't even have to be tier 5 or tier 6. It just needs to be tier 1, because you're basically getting another charge of flame ward. And that's so much better than, like, any other secondary stat. I could put 9 intelligence here, or 8 whatever, or 12. I think it's 12 at T5. But it wouldn't be as important or as good as the flame ward. You know, if I was to wear this chest piece, it would be because I want to be tankier. So I might as well make it that, you know. So for rings, Ferrobor is pretty important. And the secondary ring could be anything. It could literally be this. You know, if I want more a little bit cold resistance, because I need cold resistance. Yeah, if I want more intelligence, you know, you just have to kind of adapt to it. But mainly, if you can, use Ivory Ring, because it gives ward retention, and ward retention is really, really useful. So for brass, for amulet, in the old video I was using a devotion. Obviously, I don't recommend it. So I use a brass amulet with cast speed base, obviously. If you can get it close to 15, it's really good. You know, a few percentages here and there, they kind of build up. They become a deficit that matters at the end of the day. Lightning pen on the prefix is really important. So this could have been a T6, T7 shred armor instead, and that would have been okay. Arguably, it's better, because when you think about it, you know, you have higher chance of, like, basically applying like 2 stacks of shred armor per hit. And the roll for T5, I think it's up to 8%. So, you know, losing 3% lightning penetration or 4 is not that big of a deal, you know. That's how we can understand how to craft these items. It can even be fine if the prefix is actually T1, you know. So I obviously ran out of foraging potential here, but like it could be like T1 mana, and then you know T5 lightning penetration, and then T7 or T6 shred armor. Yeah, so frailty is also really important. I really encourage people to get frailty. If you press G and type frailty, it tells you what it does, or you can also control Alt, which explains what it does. But basically, it gives you up to 18% damage reduction, which is really crazy. Okay, and especially in on-hit build that actually can apply or can hit many times and have a really fast hit rate, I really recommend frailty out of anything else. So yeah, with boots, I made this really cracked up boots. So intelligence, vitality, health, and health. It's pretty important that whenever you get a chance to like if you find intelligence or even like T6, T7, any of these stats basically, just make a piece that's like this so that like you can be tankier and you can get like much higher EHP for specific purposes. Like if you ever be at a spot where you're dying or whatever. Yeah, this is basically one of my best like piece of gear because it got the cooldown recovery speed as well. When it comes to monos, you're most likely going to be one-shotting a lot of things. You can also switch the setup to CDR. So for example, I would be using something like this. It doesn't have any health, but that's fine. So you can do maybe this. I know the health dropped to 1500, but if you're really careful, if you're someone who's experienced and you feel comfortable, you should be fine with this. You can also change the gloves to like intelligence and then double health, so flat health and then hybrid health, something like this, obviously without the mana. And if you're sitting on 1700 health, you should be fine for the most part. And yeah, I think that's about it really for gearing. So there's some nuance with chess pieces, right? Like Prism Wraps take less elemental, 30% less elemental damage taken, which means 30% damage reduction to elemental damage. And that's actually pretty important. Like it's really strong, but it's only strong if you can slap it, vitality to it or health. And I would probably encourage people to do this because if you ever slap like T6, T7 percentage health into it, that's incredibly strong because ultimately, you're getting, I think about, it's 30% more resistances, right? On top of what you already have. And there are a lot of enemies out there that deal elemental damage. So, that's a crazy amount of EHP. And this thing actually scales because it's less damage to whatever amount. So, yeah. I hope that makes sense. Also, Dragonhorn, it's the one that we're using. It's the Caspid base. The Caspid is the most important thing here. Even if it doesn't have crit multi, it doesn't matter. And yeah, in this case, this is a one that I was using for the old setup, so I crafted Ignite and Chill into it. But ideally, I would want probably Shock and Slow, or it can be Stun and Shock, or Stun and Slow. Stun is really strong because because you're applying a lot. So, and for the idols, pretty much like I said, the Caspid Wall Aegis. The secondary stat could be anything, ideally lightning damage, but it doesn't really matter. And then you have something like this. It's really strong. That's about 108%, I believe. Over 100 damage. 100 lightning damage. So yeah, I'm still looking for the second one, but apart from that, it's pretty straightforward. So I hope that makes sense, and yeah. Okay, so with skills, lightning blast, and as I said before, we're just focusing on the spark charge side of things and a lot of the quality of life that we can find, which is 2 points on lightning aegis and the chain. If you get 20, it would be basically having +2 on helmet, twisted heart, and fragment. Okay. I feel bad because the first video I had unstable core on it, and I think a lot of people have started using it. So, and it's fine if you use it, but the problem is that it's actually not that good. It's a bit of an issue. It does give you the chain range though, which is super nice. Like I can't tell you how good this thing is. In a sense, in the context of monos, the fact that you can like, so as you can see, lightning blast has closed circuit, right? And this is one of the, it's one of the greatest thing about lightning blast is the fact that you can, if you chain the lightning blast to yourself, which this thing allows you to, you get increased damage and increased crit chance every time it chains. Okay, so because we have 4 in here, I want you to just pay attention to my stats here. 167, 29. Okay, if I do this, it goes, well, that was 856. That's about the best, and we can keep going. And yeah, so it's about probably 900, something like that. So that's a lot of stats, and I basically capped my crit out. So in an environment with crit avoidance, it kind of doesn't really matter with this build. Plus the spark charge damage would still one shot everything without crit, you know. So even if I put like a singularity here, just for fun. $74K non-crit, right? We see that. Yeah, that's like a respectable amount of damage, even with that crit. So, and basically, yeah, you can chain like more often. You get your stats like up faster. 2 points here to have access on all of these things. If you have 20, it's more important that you get all of these, okay, and all of these, and just have as little as possible in here, which is 2. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe just like 3 points in here. But if you don't have the idols, then technically lightning ages kind of don't matter for you. So you can have 5 in here and no point in here. Maybe 1 point in here, or no point in here, and then like have more chains for clear purposes. So yeah. I'm gonna go through Ascendance first and then the rest of it. Ascendance is a basically skill that you can use as a damage boost. So it has a very specific window, and we basically focus on this node here. So it doesn't drain mana. It affects 4 spells. It has a cooldown, has a duration, but we put 3 points in here, so that's 16 spells. So we get to cast Lightning Blast 16 times before it expires. before it finishes, basically. And the whole time when you're using Arcane Ascendance, you're planted. So if I'm clicking the ground, I can't move. I can still teleport, which is handy, but I can't move. So I have to cast 16 spells or wait for the cooldown, or sorry, duration. And Arcane Ascendance gives 50% cast speed, which is huge. And it gives 100% spell damage. It does make your spell cost mana, but that's fine. So we're I don't think the last video had this. This is a new thing that I started doing. So basically, I made Arcane Ascendance cast Lightning Blast, and what it is that I'm kind of looking for a bit more help with it. So I'm not sure why it's not casting Lightning Blast right now. Maybe it doesn't like detect the dummy as an enemy as like it would with minions, so you have to target it. So I can't it doesn't demonstrate really well here. But basically, you know, it's just like a bonus like damage basically with doing this. And yeah, the haste duration, you want to put 1 point in here so that like after Ascendance you teleport and you get, you know, you get the haste, which is really nice. This is not that important. You can put 1 point in here or nothing at all and just put 2 points in here. So basically you have what's that? Well, that's 4 seconds, right? And there's an interaction with teleport that you can do, because when you teleport you get haste for 4 seconds. So if I do this, or hang on, so my bad, that's the haste and a teleport, and I refresh that because teleport has its own timer for haste, right? That's 4 seconds, and you can basically perma haste if you teleport on cooldown because it's on 2.9. Yeah, so that's the wrong way to do it. There you go. As you can see, I'm basically perma hasting. And this is probably one of the reasons why I don't like having movement speed necessarily. Like, I would rather just do this, but obviously these boots offer cooldown reduction, and it just happens to have movement speed, so yeah. Coming back to it again, yeah, it's basically just a skill that you use to deal a lot of damage in a specific window, and CDR actually makes it so that you can use this more often. So it's at 3.9 without cooldown, 4.8 with cooldown, oh sorry, 4.8 without cooldown reduction on 25. So that's actually pretty significant. Yeah. If you feel really tanky, if you feel like you're fine, you can probably swap out the belt for a CDR belt. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just a matter of flavor at that point. You know, it's very contextual. Cool. So, teleport and elemental nova. Now, we use teleport to apply nova because nova actually applies spark charge. So in nova, we want to focus on being able to apply spark charge and possibly chill or freeze rate. So I enable the ice nova here, and we have 4 points in here for the freeze rate multiplier. So sometimes when I teleport, sometimes I get to freeze things, which is really nice, and it applies shock as well because I don't have shock. But if you have shock, then yeah, I mean, this can still be really good. Spark charge in here at 5. So it says that the damage is 20% more with nova. Keep in mind that the multiplier for Lightning Blast has got nothing to do with the multiplier in nova. They have separate multiplier. So the Nova one is weaker, but because we can apply 3 of them through teleport, mostly, it's still really good. So this is one. Hang on, I'm gonna go to multiple one. Okay, so this is 3. Okay, and if I teleport into it and I hit all 3 novas, which is the departure, halfway, and arrival, okay, all of these, then it's gonna apply basically 3 charge, 3 charge, and 3 charges. Okay, that's just from the nova itself. If I teleport into it, if I do this, that's 3 spark charges. But because the spark charges has AoE, all of them get to basically get hit by 9 spark charges. So in a context of, like, pulling a lot of enemies, a pack of enemies, you can apply a lot of spark charges, and a lot of times, like, I can one shot because of that. So it's really cool. Yeah. Look at that damage. That's nice. And I think if I go full intelligence, yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's just from teleport. That's really cool. That's 300k spark charge damage there. Yeah, so that's why it's really strong. For Flame Ward, Flame Ward is really cool. We don't really have to focus on the ward mechanic of Flame Ward anymore. We just need to focus on the damage reduction side of things, which is basically barrier and prismatic buffer. We get the ward retention here, 4 points in here. You can either... So here's the thing, right? So because we're converting Flame Ward to Lightning for the purpose of Spark Charge also, because every time you apply lightning damage, you have a chance to apply Spark Charge. You can technically just not have this, because 8 spell points, in my opinion, is pretty low. If it has double value, then I can respect it, but 4 points for 8, that's insanely low. So for me, I would rather just put more points in here, right? So that's gonna be 250%, and that's 250% base. When you think about it, if we understand the multipliers from closed circuit and what it can do, if you have 250% base, then the increase is gonna be a lot more. So I think, I don't know. I think that's just better. So also, I don't think that getting extra charges through here is good, because you're adding cooldown to it. You're adding 2-second cooldown, and 2-second cooldown can make the biggest difference in, like, boss fights and stuff. Yeah. So and the cast Flame Ward when stunned, I also don't think that it's good, because in this build we have a lot of HP or EHP. So technically, even when you get stunned, you shouldn't die. But that's how I use Flame Ward. And I think that's it. Pretty much. This is a build that you can play from the beginning of the game. You can just literally play the cast speed build without, if you don't have Fragment and Twisted Heart, and just play regular Lightning Blast. Maybe put points in Shatter Shock for more hit damage, because you're obviously focusing on the lightning blast damage, right? And just put more points in here. Don't have to worry about the spark charge damage. Definitely put 4 and 1 in here for the double chance and quad cast. And until you get your fragment, once you have your fragment, you can pivot to this one instead. So I hope that's useful. I hope that's enough and sufficient for you guys. And for blessings, we're looking at a really, really, really nuanced selections, I would say. So I'm just gonna open the mono. This one I have fire resistances, and you can argue that fire resistance is actually one of the easiest one to get, but it's not always the case. So I don't want to necessarily change it to something else just because I could. Because in the case where I don't have 75, it might backfire on me. So yeah, I would just leave it at that. And obviously this is flavor, this is flavor, this is flavor, so all of these three nodes are flavor. Same thing with Lost Ruin. What I mean by flavor is that, like, I don't know what you're trying to get, you know, for other builds. So Edge of Winter, physical resistance, this is pretty it's not debatable at all, because I think that, like, getting, like, physical resistance needs to be maxed at any point. I think that you can be lenient with elemental, okay? Because when we understand the enemies that deal this type of damage, they vary, right? They're all different from one to another. So yeah, cold and lightning can be scary, I think, if you're not being careful. Poison, same thing. Void is a bit more, Void is kind of bosses related for the most part, but yeah, I'm not really dying from, like, void damage. Apart from Orobis with very hard mods, then yeah. But Necrotic is pretty good. Necrotic is at 75 is pretty important. So I talked about the critical avoidance before. This is pretty common sense, I would say. You don't have to look for 50%. Obviously, the lower cast speed you have, the harder it is to get to 10 stacks. But yeah, you can probably, I don't know, you can just min max this if you want. Black Sun is pretty, I don't think it's debatable. Like, spell damage leech is pretty important. Just as a kind of like fundamental leech. I have 3.8. I never felt like I need more. And yeah, that's about it really. You can probably get more armor if you want from Spirits of Fire, or whichever it is that can give armor. I have to check that, but yeah. Hopefully that helps, and feel free to reach out to me in game. And yeah, man. Thanks, guys.